The morning sun painted the glass walls of the Sterling Financial Tower in shades of gold and orange. Marcus Sterling stepped out of his black luxury car and handed the keys to the valet. His expensive shoes clicked against the marble entrance as he walked toward the building that bore his name. Everything about Marcus spoke of success, from his perfectly tailored suit to the gold watch that caught the sunlight. Marcus had built his company from nothing 20 years ago. Now, at 45, he owned one of the most successful financial firms in the city. He took pride in his accomplishments and the respect his name carried in business circles. The Sterling Financial Tower stood 30 floors high in the heart of downtown, and Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction every time he saw it. As Marcus approached the entrance, he noticed the same sight that had been bothering him for weeks. An older man in faded jeans and a worn jacket was walking slowly along the sidewalk. Beside him trotted a golden retriever with a graying muzzle. The man's clothes looked like they had seen better days, and his shoes were scuffed and old. Marcus frowned as he watched them. This was a prestigious business district, not a place for people who looked like they belonged in the city's poorer neighborhoods. The man and his dog appeared every morning around the same time, and it irritated Marcus to see them walking past his building. Inside the lobby, Marcus found his assistant, Sarah, waiting with his morning coffee and schedule. Sarah was a dedicated employee who had worked for Marcus for 5 years. She always arrived early and made sure everything was perfect for his day. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Sarah said with a professional smile. "Your first meeting is at 9:30, and the board presentation materials are ready for review." Marcus took his coffee and glanced back toward the street. "Sarah, have you noticed that man with the dog who walks by here every morning?" Sarah looked where Marcus was pointing. Through the glass windows, she could see Ben and Buddy making their way down the sidewalk. "Yes, sir. I've seen them a few times." "It's becoming a problem," Marcus said, his voice showing his annoyance. "This is a high-end business district. Our clients expect a certain standard when they visit. Having people like that wandering around doesn't create the right impression." Sarah nodded politely, though she wasn't sure she agreed. The man and his dog seemed harmless enough. They never bothered anyone or caused any trouble. They simply walked past each morning, minding their own business. "Maybe you could speak to building security," Sarah suggested. "They might be able to address your concerns." Marcus liked this idea. "Yes, that's exactly what I'll do. We pay good money for security in this building. They should be keeping undesirable people away from the area." As the days passed, Marcus continued to notice Ben and Buddy during their morning walks. The sight bothered him more each time. He began making comments to anyone who would listen about the vagrant with the mutt, who was lowering the tone of the neighborhood. During lunch with business partners, Marcus would point out the window if Ben happened to walk by. "See what I mean?" he would say. "The city should do something about people like that. They don't belong in areas like this." His business associates usually just nodded and changed the subject. Most of them didn't share Marcus's strong feelings about the man and his dog, but they knew better than to argue with someone as successful as Marcus Sterling. Ben, meanwhile, was unaware of the negative attention he was receiving. Every morning, he woke up in his small apartment and prepared for his walk with Buddy. The golden retriever was getting older, but the daily exercise was good for both of them. Ben chose the route through downtown because it was the safest path to reach the park where Buddy could run freely. Ben had adopted Buddy 3 years ago from the police department where he had worked for 25 years. Buddy had been a working dog, trained to help officers in dangerous situations. When Buddy retired, Ben decided to give him a loving home. The decision became even more meaningful when Ben's wife, Helen, passed away from cancer 2 years later. Buddy had been his constant companion through the darkest period of his life. The morning routine was important to both of them. Ben would clip Buddy's leash and they would set out together, walking at a pace that suited the aging dog. Ben enjoyed these quiet moments before the city fully woke up. He found peace in the simple act of walking with his faithful friend. One Tuesday morning, As Ben and Buddy approached the Sterling Financial Tower, Marcus happened to be getting out of his car at the same time. Marcus had been particularly frustrated with work lately. A major deal had fallen through, and he was looking for something to blame for his bad mood. When Marcus saw Ben and Buddy approaching, something inside him snapped. He had been complaining about them for weeks, but now he decided to take direct action. Instead of going straight into his building, Marcus walked over to where the building's security guard was standing. "Officer Johnson," Marcus called out to the security guard. "I need to speak with you about something important." Officer Johnson was a middle-aged man who took his job seriously. He had worked security for the building for 3 years and had never had any major problems. He looked up as Marcus approached, noting the serious expression on his boss's face. "What can I do for you, Mr. Sterling?" Johnson asked. Marcus pointed toward Ben, who was now walking directly in front of the building with Buddy beside him. "I want you to do something about that man and his dog. They walk past here every single morning, and it's creating a bad impression for our building." Johnson looked at Ben and Buddy. He had seen them many times before and had never thought of them as a problem. They always stayed on the public sidewalk and never bothered anyone. The man seemed polite and kept his dog well behaved. "Has he done something wrong, sir?" Johnson asked carefully. Marcus's voice grew louder, loud enough that people walking nearby could hear him clearly. "Look at him. He's obviously homeless or close to it. This is a prestigious business district. We can't have vagrants and their animals cluttering up the area." Ben heard Marcus's words and felt his face burn with embarrassment. Several other pedestrians had stopped to listen to Marcus's complaints. Ben had been in situations like this before, where people made assumptions about him based on his appearance. It never stopped hurting. Buddy seemed to sense his owner's distress and moved closer to Ben's side. The loyal dog's presence gave Ben strength to handle the situation with dignity. "Excuse me, sir," Ben said quietly, approaching Marcus and the security guard. "I'm not causing any trouble. I'm just walking through to get to the park." Marcus turned to face Ben directly, his expression showing clear disdain. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. We shouldn't have to deal with people like you in this area." "People like me?" Ben asked, keeping his voice calm despite the hurt he felt. "You know exactly what I mean," Marcus replied coldly. "Find somewhere else to walk your dog. There are plenty of other routes you can take." The security guard looked uncomfortable with the situation. He could see that Ben wasn't actually doing anything wrong, but he also didn't want to upset Marcus Sterling, who owned the building. "Sir," Johnson said to Ben, "maybe you could consider using a different route. It would help avoid any future problems." Ben felt the weight of embarrassment as other people stopped to watch the confrontation. He had served his community for 25 years as a police officer, always treating people with respect regardless of their circumstances. Now he was being treated like he didn't belong in a public space. "I understand," Ben said quietly. "I'll find another way to the park." Marcus nodded with satisfaction. "Good. I'm glad we could resolve this quickly." As Ben walked away with Buddy, he felt a deep sadness settle over him. He had lost so much in recent years, his career, his wife, his sense of purpose. Now he was being denied the simple pleasure of walking his dog along a route they both enjoyed. Buddy looked up at Ben with knowing eyes, as if the intelligent dog understood that something was wrong. Ben reached down to pat Buddy's head, drawing comfort from the animal's unwavering loyalty and love. Marcus watched them leave, feeling pleased that he had solved what he saw as a problem. He thanked Officer Johnson and headed into his building, ready to start his day. He had no idea that his actions had hurt a good man who had spent his life serving others. As Ben and Buddy disappeared around the corner, taking a longer route to reach the park, neither Ben nor Marcus could have imagined how their paths would cross again in just a few days. The encounter outside the Sterling Financial Tower was only the beginning of a story that would change both of their lives in ways they never expected. The morning sun continued to shine on the glass tower, and the city moved forward with its busy rhythm, unaware of the small act of cruelty that had just taken place on its streets. A week had passed since Marcus embarrassed Ben outside the Sterling Financial Tower. Ben had found a new route to the park that added 15 minutes to their daily walk, but he accepted it without complaint. Buddy seemed confused by the change in routine, often looking back toward their old path, but he followed faithfully wherever Ben led. Marcus had forgotten about the incident entirely. His mind was focused on more important matters, a major business deal that required his complete attention. The Peterson account was worth millions to his company, and Marcus was determined to close it successfully. Thursday evening found Marcus still at his desk long after most employees had gone home. The building was quiet except for the hum of air conditioning and the occasional sound of the cleaning crew working on other floors. Sarah had left hours ago, but not before reminding Marcus that he had been working too many late nights. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the clock on his computer screen. It was nearly 10 o'clock. He had been reviewing contracts and financial projections since noon, taking only a brief break for a sandwich that Sarah had ordered for him. The Peterson deal was more complicated than he had expected. There were legal details that needed careful attention, and Marcus wanted everything perfect before tomorrow's presentation. His reputation for excellence had built his company's success, and he refused to let any detail slip past his review. Finally, Marcus felt satisfied with his work. He saved his files, shut down his computer, and gathered his belongings. The building felt different at night, larger somehow, with shadows stretching across the empty hallways. His footsteps echoed as he walked toward the elevator. In the elevator, Marcus thought about the presentation he would give tomorrow morning. The Peterson family had built their business over 3 generations, and they valued tradition and trust above flashy promises. Marcus knew he needed to appeal to those values to win their account. The elevator reached the parking garage level with a soft ding. Marcus stepped out into the dimly lit underground space. Most of the parking spots were empty now, with only a few cars belonging to security guards and maintenance workers scattered throughout the area. Marcus's luxury car waited in his reserved spot near the elevator. As CEO, he had one of the prime parking spaces that allowed him to reach his car quickly and safely. The garage had good security, with cameras in every corner and regular patrols by building security. As Marcus walked toward his car, he reached into his jacket pocket for his keys. The garage was quiet except for the low hum of ventilation fans and the distant sound of traffic from the street above. Marcus was thinking about tomorrow's schedule when he heard footsteps behind him. At first, Marcus didn't pay attention to the sound. Security guards and maintenance workers often moved through the garage during evening hours. But something about these footsteps made him uncomfortable. They seemed to be following his pace, stopping when he stopped, moving when he moved. Marcus quickened his walk toward his car, his hand tightening around his keys. When he reached his vehicle, he turned around to look back toward the elevator. A man in dark clothes was walking directly toward him, moving with purpose that made Marcus's heart begin to race. "Good evening," the stranger said, his voice carrying a threatening tone. "Nice car you have there." Marcus could see now that the man was young, probably in his 20s, with nervous energy that suggested he was not thinking clearly. The stranger's clothes were dirty, and his hands shook slightly as he approached. "Thank you," Marcus replied carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was just leaving." The young man stepped closer, and Marcus saw something that made his blood turn cold. There was a gun in the stranger's right hand, held low but clearly visible. Marcus had never been in a situation like this before, and fear filled his chest like ice water. "I don't think you're leaving just yet," the man said, his voice getting louder. "I need some things from you first. Your wallet, your car keys, and that fancy watch." Marcus felt his legs grow weak. He had heard about crimes like this happening in the city, but always to other people. His building was supposed to be secure. There were cameras everywhere. How had this person gotten inside? "Please," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't hurt me." The criminal seemed pleased by Marcus's fear. He stepped even closer, raising the gun so Marcus could see it clearly. That's smart thinking. Now move slowly and give me your wallet. Marcus reached into his jacket with shaking hands. He had several $100s in cash, plus credit cards and identification. His whole life was in that wallet, but right now it seemed like a small price to pay for his safety. As Marcus pulled out his wallet, the young man became more aggressive. Hurry up. And keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus dropped the wallet, and it fell to the concrete floor with a soft thud. Both men looked down at it, and in that moment, Marcus heard new sounds echoing through the garage. Footsteps approaching from the direction of the stairwell, and something else, the soft padding of animal paws on concrete. Ben and Buddy appeared around the corner of a concrete pillar. They had been taking their evening walk through the neighborhood when Buddy suddenly stopped and began pulling toward the garage entrance. Ben had learned to trust his dog's instincts over the years, and something about Buddy's behavior suggested danger nearby. When Ben saw the scene in front of him, a well-dressed man being threatened by someone with a gun, his police training immediately took control. 25 years of experience kicked in, and Ben quickly assessed the situation while staying hidden behind the pillar. The criminal had his back to Ben and was focused entirely on Marcus. This gave Ben a tactical advantage, but he knew he needed to act carefully. One wrong move could make the situation worse for everyone involved. Buddy sensed the tension in the air and looked up at Ben for guidance. The intelligent dog had been trained for situations exactly like this one. During his years with the police department, Buddy had helped officers apprehend dozens of criminals. Though he was older now, his instincts remained sharp. Ben made a quick decision. He whispered a command to Buddy, a word the dog remembered from his working days. Buddy's ears perked up, and his body tensed with readiness. Meanwhile, Marcus was trying to pick up his wallet while keeping his eyes on the gun. The criminal was getting impatient, shifting his weight from foot to foot and looking around the garage nervously. "Come on, old man," the criminal said to Marcus. "And give me those car keys too. I'm getting tired of waiting." Marcus fumbled for his car keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold them. He had never felt so helpless in his entire life. All his success and money meant nothing in this moment. That's when Ben stepped out from behind the pillar. "Police," he called out, using his strongest voice of authority. "Drop your weapon now." The criminal spun around in surprise, the gun still in his hand. For a moment, everyone froze, Ben, Marcus, the young criminal, and Buddy all motionless in the dim garage light. Ben was no longer an active police officer, but the criminal didn't know that. Ben's voice carried the confidence of someone who had dealt with dangerous situations many times before. He stood straight and tall, projecting the authority he had learned over decades of police work. "I said drop it," Ben repeated, taking a step forward. The criminal's eyes darted between Ben and Marcus, trying to decide what to do. The gun in his hand wavered as confusion and fear replaced his earlier confidence. That moment of hesitation was all Buddy needed. Ben gave the dog a subtle hand signal, and Buddy sprang into action with the speed and precision of his younger days. The golden retriever launched himself at the criminal, hitting him squarely in the chest with enough force to knock him backward. The gun flew from the young man's hand and skittered across the concrete floor, coming to rest several feet away. Buddy pinned the criminal to the ground, using his weight and training to keep the man from getting up. The dog's gentle nature was gone, replaced by the professional focus he had learned during his police career. Ben rushed forward and kicked the gun further away from everyone. Then he knelt down beside the struggling criminal and used techniques he remembered from his police training to keep the man subdued. Marcus stood frozen, watching in amazement as the man he had judged so harshly just days before took complete control of the dangerous situation. Ben's calm professionalism and Buddy's brave actions had saved Marcus's life. "Call 911, Ben told Marcus firmly. "Tell them we have a robbery suspect in custody in the parking garage of the Sterling Financial Tower." Marcus fumbled for his phone, his hands still shaking from fear and shock. As he dialed the emergency number, he kept staring at Ben and Buddy. This was the same man he had complained about to security. The same man he had called a vagrant and embarrassed in front of other people. While they waited for police to arrive, Ben kept the criminal calm and secure. Buddy remained alert but relaxed, staying close to his partner as he had been trained to do. The whole incident had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours to Marcus. When the first police car arrived with flashing lights, Marcus finally began to understand who Ben really was. The responding officers treated Ben with obvious respect, calling him by name and asking about his well-being. It became clear that Ben was known to the local police department, and not as a troublemaker. As the criminal was led away in handcuffs, one of the officers stayed to take statements from Ben and Marcus. The officer addressed Ben as Sergeant Rodriguez, and Marcus realized that this man had held a position of authority and respect in the police force. Marcus watched Ben give his statement with professional clarity and detail. This was no homeless vagrant. This was a trained law enforcement officer who had risked his own safety to help a stranger, the same stranger who had treated him with such disrespect just days before. The realization of his mistake hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had judged Ben based on nothing more than his appearance and clothing. He had assumed the worst about a man who turned out to be exactly the kind of person Marcus should respect and admire. As the police finished their work and began to leave, Marcus stood alone with Ben and Buddy in the garage. The crisis was over, but Marcus knew that something important had changed. He looked at Ben with new eyes, seeing not a nuisance but a hero who had probably saved his life. The three of them stood in the quiet garage, and Marcus realized he owed Ben more than just gratitude. He owed him an apology and a chance to make things right. The parking garage felt different now that the police had left. The bright flashing lights were gone, and the normal quiet had returned. Marcus stood near his car, still trying to process what had just happened. His hands had stopped shaking, but his mind was racing with thoughts he couldn't organize. Ben was checking Buddy's paws, making sure the brave dog hadn't been hurt during the struggle with the criminal. Buddy's tail wagged softly as Ben examined him, showing no signs of stress from the dangerous situation they had just handled. Marcus watched them together and felt a heavy weight in his chest. This was the same man he had called a vagrant just 1 week ago. The same man he had embarrassed in front of other people. The same man who had just saved his life without hesitation. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, his voice still rough from fear. "I need to say something to you." Ben looked up from where he was kneeling beside Buddy. His face was kind but tired, and Marcus could see the lines around his eyes that spoke of experience and wisdom. "You don't need to say anything," Ben replied. "I'm just glad you're safe. That's what matters." Marcus shook his head. "No, you don't understand. I do need to say something. Last week, outside my building, I treated you terribly. I made assumptions about you that were completely wrong. I'm deeply sorry for my behavior." Ben stood up slowly, one hand resting on Buddy's head. "I remember," he said simply. "But people make mistakes. You were just protecting something you cared about." "That's no excuse," Marcus said firmly. "I judged you based on your clothes and nothing else. I called you names and had you removed from a public sidewalk. That was wrong, and I'm ashamed of myself." Marcus took a step closer to Ben, wanting him to understand how sincere his apology was. "I had no idea you were a police officer. Those officers who just left here, they called you Sergeant Rodriguez. How long did you serve?" Ben's expression softened slightly. 25 years with the city police department. I retired 2 years ago after my wife passed away. Buddy here was my partner for the last 5 years of my career." Marcus looked down at Buddy with new amazement. "He's a police dog." "Was a police dog," Ben corrected. "He's retired now, just like me. But as you saw tonight, he still remembers his training. Buddy saved dozens of officers during his career, and he helped capture more criminals than I can count. Marcus felt even worse about his treatment of them. And I called him a mutt. I'm so sorry. Ben smiled for the first time since Marcus had known him. Buddy's been called worse things than that. He doesn't hold grudges. Marcus looked at Ben's worn clothes and scuffed shoes with new understanding. Are you having financial difficulties? Is that why you're dressed so simply? Ben considered the question carefully before answering. Police pensions aren't very generous, especially when you retire early. After Helen died, I didn't see much point in working any longer. Buddy and I have enough to get by, but we don't have money for fancy clothes or expensive things. Helen was your wife? Marcus asked gently. For 30 years, Ben said, his voice becoming quiet. She died from cancer 2 years ago. Buddy helped me through the worst time of my life. Those morning walks we take are important for both of us. They give us purpose and keep us moving forward. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had been so focused on his own image and success that he had failed to see the real person in front of him. Ben was a man who had lost everything that mattered to him, yet he still found the courage to help a stranger in danger. The route you were taking past my building, Marcus said. Was that the best way to the park? Ben nodded. It's the safest path, and it's easier on Buddy's old joints. We've been using that route for over a year now. But we found another way. It takes longer, but it works. Marcus made a decision that felt more important than any business deal he had ever closed. I want you to use your original route again. In fact, I want you to know that you and Buddy are welcome at the Sterling Financial Tower anytime. I'll make sure building security knows you're honored guests. Ben looked surprised. That's very kind of you, Mr. Sterling, but you don't need to do that. Yes, I do, Marcus said firmly. And I want to do more than that. Would you consider having coffee with me tomorrow morning? I'd like to learn more about your police career and hear your stories. Ben seemed uncertain. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure we have much in common. We have more in common than you might think, Marcus replied. I built my business by learning from people who knew more than I did. You have 25 years of experience dealing with people and solving problems. That's exactly the kind of wisdom I could use. Over the next few days, Marcus found himself looking forward to his conversations with Ben. They met for coffee each morning before Marcus started his work day. Ben shared stories from his police career, telling Marcus about the challenges of serving the community and the satisfaction of helping people during their worst moments. Marcus learned that Ben had started as a patrol officer and worked his way up to sergeant through dedication and hard work. He had served in some of the city's most difficult neighborhoods, always treating people with respect regardless of their circumstances. The most important thing I learned, Ben told Marcus during one of their coffee meetings, is that you never really know someone until you take the time to understand their story. People who seem difficult or different usually have good reasons for being the way they are. Marcus thought about this lesson often. He began to notice other people around his building and neighborhood with new eyes. The woman who cleaned his office building worked 2 jobs to support her family. The security guard had served in the military before taking the job at Sterling Financial. Everyone had a story worth knowing. After 2 weeks of morning conversations, Marcus had an idea that excited him more than any business project he had worked on recently. He asked Ben to visit his office for a special meeting. I have a proposition for you, Marcus said as they sat in his executive office overlooking the city. My company could use someone with your experience and skills. I'd like to offer you a position as our security consultant. Ben looked surprised. I appreciate the thought, but I don't know anything about corporate security. You know about people, Marcus explained. You know how to assess situations and solve problems. Those skills are exactly what we need. Plus, you could help train our security staff and develop better safety procedures. Marcus had done his research. The position would pay Ben a salary that would significantly improve his financial situation. More importantly, it would give Ben a sense of purpose and a way to use his valuable experience. "I'd want Buddy to come to work with me," Ben said after considering the offer. Marcus laughed. "After what Buddy did in that parking garage, I think he's earned the right to go anywhere he wants in this building." Ben accepted the position, and the change in both men was remarkable. Ben brought a new perspective to Sterling Financial's security operations. His experience with people and his calm professionalism impressed everyone he worked with. Marcus also had another idea that he was particularly proud of. He spoke with the building management about creating a small garden area next to the Sterling Financial Tower. The space would be a memorial garden honoring police officers and their families who had sacrificed for the community. When Marcus showed Ben the completed garden 2 months later, Ben was speechless. A small plaque near the entrance read, "In memory of Helen Rodriguez and all the families who support those who serve." Buddy's tail wagged as he explored the new space, which had become his favorite spot for their daily walks. The garden became a popular place for employees and visitors to the building. People often ate lunch there or took short breaks from their busy schedules. Marcus was pleased to see that the space brought a sense of peace to the busy downtown area. On a sunny morning 6 months after the parking garage incident, Marcus joined Ben and Buddy for their daily walk around the memorial garden. This had become a regular routine for Marcus, one of the most important parts of his day. "I've been thinking about that night in the garage," Marcus said as they walked slowly along the garden path. "You saved my life, but I think you saved more than that. You helped me become a better person." Ben smiled and watched Buddy sniff around a tree. "We all need help sometimes. The important thing is being willing to change when we learn something new." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I spent so many years focused on success and money that I forgot about the things that really matter. Like treating people with kindness and respect. Like taking time to understand someone before making judgments about them. Those are lessons worth learning," Ben agreed. "Helen used to tell me that how we treat people shows who we really are inside." As they completed their walk and prepared to start the workday, Marcus felt grateful for the friendship that had grown from such an unlikely beginning. He had learned that true success wasn't measured by the size of his bank account or the height of his building. It was measured by the positive impact he could have on other people's lives. Buddy trotted beside them as they entered the Sterling Financial Tower, his tail wagging with the contentment of a dog who knew he was loved and valued. The three of them had formed an unexpected family, brought together by circumstances that had taught them all about courage, forgiveness, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. Marcus's employees often commented on the positive changes in their boss since Ben had joined the company. Marcus was more patient, more understanding, and more interested in the people around him than just the profits they could generate. The memorial garden continued to grow and flourish, becoming a symbol of second chances and the power of human connection. Visitors to the building often stopped to read the plaque and enjoy the peaceful atmosphere that Ben and Buddy had helped create. As Marcus began his workday, surrounded by the success he had built but enriched by the friendship he had found, he knew that the most valuable lesson of his life had come from a man he had once dismissed as worthless. That lesson would stay with him forever, reminding him that everyone deserves respect, understanding, and the chance to show who they really are beneath the surface.